Bubble Witch Podcast, Episode 5. Welcome back, friends. I'm glad you're here. Wherever you're listening from today, I hope you found yourself a comfortable place to land for a little while. Maybe you're crafting, maybe you're driving, maybe you're sitting quietly with a cup of tea before the day begins. However you arrived, welcome. Today feels a little different, not dramatically different, just enough to notice. Like the moment when the light starts changing at the end of summer, or when you realize a favorite season is beginning to shift into the next one. The wheel is turning. And I suppose that's what I want to talk about today. Change, transitions, the spaces between one season and the next. Over the last few episodes, we've spent time talking about some of the foundations of Bubble Witch. We've talked about the gathering season, tiny moments of joy, why bubbles matter, why rest matters. Those ideas sit at the heart of everything I do. They shape the way I move through the year, the way I celebrate, the way I create, the way I try to notice the world around me. And now we're standing at the edge of something new. Soon we'll begin the Lammas Gathering season. We'll walk through it together 1 week at a time, following the same rhythm that lives inside the Bubble Witch's little book of llamas, books, and journal. Not rushing, not skipping ahead, just moving through the season as it unfolds. And honestly, that feels right. Because one of the things the wheel has taught me is that every season deserves its own space, its own pace, its own attention. We live in a world that encourages us to hurry, to move on before we've fully arrived, to start the next thing before we've finished appreciating the current one. But nature doesn't work that way. Nature takes its time. Summer doesn't suddenly become autumn. Spring doesn't wake up one morning and decide to skip ahead to harvest. Everything unfolds gradually, one day at a time, one moment at a time. And we're allowed to do the same. I've been thinking about that lately. Partly because of Fairy Fest. Partly because of a pirate adventure my daughter surprised me with. And partly because life has a funny way of reminding us to be present. A few weeks ago, I was standing in the rain as Pixie the bubble raccoon, making bubbles for hours while children chased them across a field. Then, this past weekend, I found myself on a pirate adventure. Life is strange sometimes. Beautiful, unexpected, a little ridiculous. But that's part of what I love about it. The funny thing is, the pirate adventure went exactly according to plan. Mostly because I didn't have one. I didn't go looking for a particular outcome. I didn't have a checklist. I wasn't trying to create the perfect experience. I simply showed up excited to see what the adventure had to offer. I think that's part of the magic. Sometimes we miss experiences because we're busy comparing them to expectations. We're so focused on what we thought would happen that we don't fully experience what is happening. But when we arrive with curiosity instead of expectations, something changes. We become available to the moment, available to surprise, available to wonder, available to stories we couldn't have planned. And isn't that true of seasons too? The most meaningful parts of a season are rarely the things we schedule. They're the moments we discover along the way. The conversations, the laughter, the unexpected adventures, the tiny treasures we didn't know we were looking for. Those are the things that stay with us. The funny thing is that when I look back at experiences like those, I rarely remember the big things first. I don't remember schedules, or plans, or logistics. I remember moments. A laugh, a conversation, a bubble floating through the rain, a ridiculous joke, a view from a pirate boat, a feeling. A memory that arrives quietly and decides to stay. Tiny moments. The same tiny moments we've been talking about since the beginning of this podcast. the moments that seem small while we're living them, but become treasures later. And maybe that's one of the reasons I love seasonal living. It gives us permission to notice where we are before moving on, to appreciate this season before chasing the next one, to gather what this moment has to offer. Because every season has something to teach, every season brings gifts, and every season eventually asks us to let go and continue forward. The wheel turns, whether we're ready or not. The seasons change, children grow, projects end, new ideas begin. Summer slowly leans toward harvest, and life keeps moving. But I've learned that change feels a little less frightening when we stop treating it like an enemy, when we stop fighting the turning of the wheel, when we trust that every season has a purpose, even the seasons we don't fully understand yet, especially those seasons. I think one of the biggest misunderstandings modern humans have is believing we're somehow separate from nature, as if nature is something out there, something we visit, something we go look at, a place we drive to on the weekends. But that's not really true. We're part of it. We've always been part of it. The same world that created forests created us. The same world that moves through seasons moves through us. The same cycles that guide the trees and the fields and the rivers are still quietly working in our own lives. We just don't always notice. Somehow we've convinced ourselves that we're supposed to be different, that we're supposed to keep producing when every other living thing is resting, that we're supposed to keep growing when every other living thing is recovering, that we're supposed to keep pushing when every other part of the natural world understands the importance of cycles. But nature doesn't work that way. Nothing in nature blooms all year. Nothing harvests all year. Nothing grows continuously without pause. The world is built on cycles: growth, rest, gathering, release, renewal, again and again. Not because the world is lazy, because that's how the world sustains itself, because that's how the world avoids burning itself out. And if we're honest, maybe humans aren't quite as different as we'd like to believe. We need rest. We need recovery. We need seasons. We need moments of gathering and moments of letting go. We need time to create and time to replenish. Not because we're failing, because we're part of the same living world. The wheel doesn't stop turning for us. We're already on it. The question isn't whether we participate. The question is whether we're paying attention. And that's really what the gathering season is. An invitation to pay attention. To remember that we're not standing outside the world watching it happen. We're part of it. Part of the harvest. Part of the renewal. Part of the story. Part of the turning of the wheel itself. That's one of the reasons the gathering season model became so important to me. Because if I'm being honest, I spent a lot of years rushing through things. Not because I wanted to, because that's what the world teaches us to do. Finish one thing, move on to the next. Get ready for what's coming. Stay productive, stay busy. Keep moving. And one day, I realized I was reaching the end of seasons without really experiencing them. I had celebrated holidays. I had marked dates on a calendar. But I hadn't actually lived inside the season. I hadn't gathered it. I hadn't noticed it. I hadn't given it room to unfold. That's where the idea of the gathering season came from. What if we gave ourselves permission to experience a season slowly? What if celebration wasn't a single day? What if it was a relationship? What if we spent a few weeks paying attention, noticing, gathering memories, collecting moments, creating things, sharing stories, watching the season reveal itself little by little? And honestly, that's changed everything for me. Because now I don't feel like I'm chasing the wheel. I feel like I'm walking alongside it. And that's what we're about to do with Lammas. We're about to begin a new gathering season, a new chapter, a new set of observations and experiences. We'll move through it together week by week, slowly, gently, the Bubble Witch way. Not as experts, not as teachers, not as people trying to do everything perfectly, just as companions walking through the season together. And honestly, I think that's my favorite part. Because this podcast was never meant to be a lecture. It was meant to feel like sitting down with a friend, sharing a cup of tea, comparing notes about the season, pointing out beautiful things we might have missed otherwise. And that's exactly what we'll keep doing. Before we go, let's pull a tiny season tin card. I always love this part, because no matter what we've been talking about, the cards somehow seem to find exactly the right thing to carry forward into the week ahead. So, this week's card is a rest card. Listen to the night sounds. I love this card because it reminds us that the world keeps breathing whether we're paying attention or not. When the day begins to wind down and the world grows quieter, there is still so much happening around us. Crickets begin their songs. Owls call from the trees. The wind moves through the leaves. A distant dog barks. The frogs start their evening conversations. The night has its own rhythm, its own music, its own way of reminding us that we are part of a living world. And maybe that's what this card is inviting us to notice. Not just the sounds themselves, but our connection to them. The same world that carries the seasons forward is still moving all around us. Even when we're resting, even when we're quiet, even when we're doing absolutely nothing at all. I think sometimes we forget that rest is not the opposite of living. Rest is part of living. The fields rest, the forests rest, the animals rest. The world itself moves through periods of activity and recovery, and we are part of that same rhythm. So this week, if you can, spend a few minutes listening to the night sounds. Step outside, open a window, put down the phone, turn off the television. Let the world introduce itself. Listen to the crickets. Listen to the wind. Listen to the life moving quietly around you. And remember that you're not standing apart from it. You're part of it, part of the story, part of the rhythm, part of the turning of the wheel. And next time, we'll begin our journey into the Lammas Gathering season together. Until next time, take gentle care of yourself, and I'll meet you again somewhere between the bubbles and the tea.